Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you all are having a great day. So today, I got home this evening, and I saw a video up by Cynthia G entitled "Becky Tells the Real Reason Black Men Prefer White Women." All right, so it's kind of interesting reasons that she gives in the video. I think it's also a good follow up video to the last one I did about black women divesting. Feel free to take a look at that video if you're interested in topics like that. But this time around, it's about the real reason that black men prefer white women. And I tried to take a note on some of her points because I wanted to address them. I found them very interesting. Um, One of the first points that she made that I was able to note was the idea that black men choose white women to basically kind of partake in that role of being white, right? To escape blackness in a sense, right? And and I have witnessed certain situations that where that would seem to be true, right? Um, I would say that there is a lot of truth in that viewpoint. That it could be that some black men are dating white women because they feel. Let's like if we were to give the example, let's say that um, you have a black man who goes to some of the top Ivy League schools in the country, right, and goes to the Yale, the Harvards, and you see him in a very prominent career, and then you see him with this kind of very American idea, white woman, blonde hair, blue eyes, or something like that, right? And he's this kind of what some might deem a white bread type, a black person, right? It's one of these black people who don't really feel they're, in their idea of who they are, they don't want to identify with being African American or being a person of some type of black race or descent or something. Um, and so they do this because what this does is this kind of is giving them the gateway or the pass to experience another dimension or level of that. Um, and I can see where there are cases where that could be proven to be true. But I would list this one caveat as well with it, um, to Cynthia G's statements about this being a major reason why black men prefer white women, right? And I'm assuming by prefer white women she means over black women, right? Um, here's the caveat I would give to that very ideology of trying to escape blackness by having these totems, symbolic totems in a sense, that are literal totems that are people, to kind of be that thing, uh, or move to that space. And that is, if that is the case that they're using that in a methodology to do that, I would I would point to on the historical record, right, that this is a common thread or theme, not just with black men or people of African American descent or what have you, but this is a global situation that's happened throughout history, and that is anytime there is a certain rural cultural establishment of power, right? And I can just give you some ideas from the ancient world, just kind of make sense. If you look back in empires like Rome or Greece, you look like back to Alexander the Great's empire, or what have you, the Egyptian empire, whatever the dominant culture of that time was, what would happen is the people in those cultures, right, would try to be like that dominant culture, right? This isn't something exclusive to black people. I just want to be clear about that. No matter where you go around the world, and uh, you're gonna see some aspect of that, right? Uh, to the point where that culture starts to emulate the more dominant culture. Back in the ancient times with Rome, people would dress like Romans. They would do their hair like Romans. They listen to Roman music. Their entire civilization would start to mirror Rome. And it wasn't just anything about Rome conquering their culture and enforcing them. Well, it was, obviously that it was there, but it just influenced everyone to, that was the idea of what they would kind of strive for. So I think it can happen at the subconscious level, but I think all I'm saying is that this isn't something I will find relatively limited to just black men. In the Asian world, right? This is something that is happening on a large degree, and Asian men and some of the Asian cultures are speaking out about it, and that is the idea that there are some Asian women who have a certain image of white men versus Asian men, and in some cases, what will happen is Asian women will start to have certain degree of preference for white men, right, and certain outcomes, right, and what is that based on? That could be based on some ideology that Asian women feel that white men are better in certain things in certain areas, right? Now, we cannot leave out in history as well is that during World War II, during the wars that followed in the Asian side of the hemisphere of the world, that you had the World War II, the Axis powers. You had Japan, right, a dominant world power at the time, defeated by the Allied powers, right, the United States, defeated by them, and basically kind of greatly influenced then by America and the culture that now exists between America and Japan. And then you had the Korean Wars. After that, you had the Philippines, where they were and during World War II, and the Korean War that preceded that. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that in all these instances, this seems to be a global thing that happens within certain dominant cultures, right? That's not to say Cynthia G's not correct in that there are black men who are trying to escape being black, because much like many other people in other cultures have done throughout the world, the more dominant cultures were so influential that a lot of the progress people felt they were making, whether it was this vice grip on them, to where it had to be that way, that you were going to have to conform to a certain way to that culture to reach certain levels and plateaus, or whether it was all on a psychological level. I think in the back of many of these people's minds, they start to basically connect that with it being necessary for them to advance further in culture and civilization, right? So I think there is a deeper level on that, and I think a valid argument and point can be made that if that is going on with black men, with certain black men with certain preferences for white people, but I would again extend that into this being something that is actually kind of normal culturally, right? To a certain degree. Now, the argument might be, that with black people, with African American people, it is a lot more extreme, but without making excuses, but to be a bit, balanced as I could be. Uh, Not many races of people, or the Black American experience was kind of so unique to the Americas that I think, and this is actually very recent in history. You're talking like the 60s, and there was no civil rights, right? So you're talking 4 decades ago, 4 or 5 decades or whatever, ago. In the scope of history, not a very, very long time. And so I would say that it is still a psychological hold that is still quite fresh in the Black African American experience, and that could have a great impact on what's happening with that. That would be my idea of that. I think the point is valid, but I would say that keep in mind that this does happen. It happens in India. It happens in Asia, right? Where cultures that are more dominant over those other cultures. Why do you think, and I'll just give you like this example, why do you think that Asian people have these surgeries on their eyes to make their eyes look less, they're doing a lot of that. They're trying to look more Western, right? Because the idea, some feel that the West is, pretty much the dominant culture, right? That's what you want to be like, what you want to do. So, it could be that you're probably seeing Asian men trying to date white women as well, and things like that. So all I'm saying is that this isn't something that is just specific to Black men and their preference, right? The other point she made that I found was interesting, that I also thought was valid, interesting enough, was the idea that Black men would prefer white women to escape manhood, right? In other words, right, the idea being that these Black men would seek out uh, this white woman who's going to be less, she's going to be a lot more cooperative to his, to his needs, whatever those needs may be. If the need is not to be employed, or to take care of them, then she would be cooperative to that. And that's why they have a preference, because of the idea that they're going to be easier and they're going to allow them to get away with a lot of things that Black women wouldn't allow them to get away with, right? And I do think that's a valid point, that that especially this type of caliber of man she would be talking about, who doesn't want to do these things, right? He's trying to escape manhood, right? He wants someone who's going to take care of him, right? Who's gonna let him do all these various things that a Black woman would never allow, right? And then she went on in the video. She went on even to say, things like, um, if the white woman then tries to speak up about or something like that, then she's behaving like a Black woman, and things like that. The Black man no longer wants her, right? And so again, I think that's valid. Those are valid points, right? I can see where that does happen, but I also have a caveat for that, right? I have a caveat to add to that. Also, the other thing she added was, generally these are going to be undesirable women who can't compete within their own, their own race. In other words, the white men don't want them, and the Black men do. And so then they take the Black men, they got to put up with the Black man because, he's desirable. They're desirable to him, but not the people in their race, right? Um, so here's what I think the caveat would be with the idea of escaping manhood, right? So these Black men who would do that, um, the thing about it is, here's my concept about it. Um, if you're the type of person who is, I'm going to use it I'm going to use the big L word, right? Let's use the L word, right? We're going to say the loser, right? The loser. And I I don't like using words like that, but just for reference points, right? People who would have that mindset about a thing, right? I think in a mindset like that, this isn't a mindset that's going to be limited to just a black person who a black man who doesn't want the responsibility of manhood in that context, right? This type of person, you know, I believe that they exist in every race. Like you have these type men who do this thing where they have women that maybe not have a lot of self-esteem. They may not be particularly attractive people, and of course we've seen that play out with many. But the thing, I guess the point I'm trying to make is this isn't something I would limit to the black man. I would say this is a man. This is the preference of a loser, a man who's a loser across the entire board. Because if you have a man like that, right, I don't think he's going to really care about what race you are. I think he's just going to care about if he can implement that strategy, right, and it works, right. Like if you have any type of male who he's decided that he's not going to be employed and he's not going to be a productive member of society and he's going to live off women. I that is a common existing type of man that goes against across the spectrum, right? So my caveat would be this isn't something limited to where black and even if he could find a white man to take care of his every need. The other issue I would have with that is what Cynthia G talks about a lot, or the point I would make is when she talks about the idea of uh when black men oh, I kind of I kind of forgot my point there. Maybe it'll come back to me. I was getting so, but oh, I think I remember what it was now. When you talk about this type of person, right? Um, um, or the idea of black male worship. That's the point I was trying to get. The direction I was trying to go. Her idea of the black male worship, right? That there is a big issue with black women, worshiping these black men. And so, I guess they're kind of accommodating their lack of manhood in that sense where they can do all these things, right? But now, if that's the point, if there's so much black male worship going on, then wouldn't it be like I would think it would be a lot less of that, right? Or a lot less black men needing to run to have this preference of white women for that reason, if that makes sense, right? So it should be, if that's the case, if this is why black men prefer the white women, right? Unless it's a lot of black women who aren't allowing this, then I would think that there would be a lot more of them going for the white woman, right? If that makes sense, right? If the black women prefer this type of black man already, then you know what I mean. It would be almost no need for the black man to go to the white woman, right? If that's the entire idea of why he would be doing that. So that's why I guess I'm a little bit confused with the black male worship. Is it at epidemic levels or is it just a few cases? You know what I mean? Because if it's like, to that degree, then, um, also, I would also add to that, if I understand this correctly, if the idea is to, you know, use these women up and be taken care of, that kind of sounds like the idea of the Pookie and the Ray Ray, right? So then, is it that the Pookie and the Ray Ray types are the ones that are preferring to date the white women, right? Is that one of the reason for their preference? Because what I'm understanding, or what I've been able to see with the idea of the Pookie and the Ray Ray, is that I've seen like the Pookie and the Ray Ray types, they date black women and white women. Like it's like I don't know if the Pookie and the Ray Ray type necessarily goes, well, I'm only going to date black women. My preference is only black women. I think in certain, uh, uh, in certain ideas of these type men, many of the ones I've seen, they've dated black women and white women, right? Now, if white, I guess the whole idea though is then white women are their preference. I think an idea of a Pookie and a Ray Ray, maybe a white woman can be his preference in that scope if he's dependent on her to take care of him, right? In that, in that sense. So maybe some of your comments can explain that a little bit better. Uh, are the Pookie and the Ray Rays only dating black women, right, and not white women? Because many of I've seen they've dated white women and black women. Um, um, because I'm kind of putting it in that situation because the characteristics of men who live off women and do those type things would, I think, fit in that category. If I understand it correctly. Um, what else did she say? I think that I pretty much covered it. I think most of the points could be valid on that. I'm not going to say they aren't. Uh, outside the scope of some of the things I said earlier about like how this is a global cultural thing that happens shift, where if there's a dominant society that comes in through history, through whether it's warfare or some type of assimilation, or whatever it is to some degree, that the less dominant group of people, they start to emulate those people, right? And that's just something that is going to happen on every continent to a certain degree, right? I don't think that's avoidable. Um, I think it's just how we are as a species, right? I don't even know if it works like that. I'll have to do some more study on that. I could be incorrect, but I just see it how it seems to play out that way. So I'm starting to wonder, why is this happening with everybody, right? Um, uh, and hmm. So I don't know. I think that pretty much covers all the points I could make about it. Yes, it does happen. I, I think it happens on a certain level, like many other groups. But I think here's where the difference lies in a lot of this. Like again, if you look at some of Dr. Umar Johnson's stats, and I haven't really looked them up, I don't know how accurate they are, but he says that black men date at a rate higher other races of people than any other group of people. But I might have a few things to say about that. And I also want to speak to the idea of black men coming up with this idea that they're the most desired men in the in the world, right? So I want to speak on those two things real quick, and then I want to close out. So let's say Umar Johnson's statistics are correct, right? And then you have this not happening with Asian men, you have this not happening with white men. Would it be accurate to say as well, and I could be fact checked on this, I could be wrong on this, but black people, would it be accurate to say that black people are also, especially in America, one of the most mixed races of people there are? Like, a lot of black people walk around, they don't know exactly what's in them. But one thing about it would seem most of the time, with the African, genes, as it were, being, pretty dominant like genes, that anytime you see like a white person who has some type of African descent or something, a lot of times you can tell. There are some cases where you can't much, but it seems you can, right? But with black people, you could walk around, and black people could be mixed to a great degree, and you might not even know they're a mix, if that makes sense. So how many of these black people, it's I guess the point I'm trying to make is, if it is like that and black people are doing that more than any other race, I think a lot of black people in America also don't really know how mixed they are in their history, right, in their genealogy, right. So it could be that some of these black people already mixed a great deal with other things. And then I'll speak real quick to the last point of black men that say that they're the most desired race of men in the world. The thing about that is that historically, that wouldn't be 100% accurate, I don't think. But there are some things that might feed into that idea and might make a little bit of sense. And I'm going to explain them real quick. So, black men, when you think about black men and you think about the last 200-300 years of black men in America, the black African American is the only race that was part of a somewhat successful bioengineering program. And what I mean by that, remember during slavery, they would take men, right? Black people, black men, and try to make the strongest slaves, right? With the strongest women, right? They would probably look at a black man, right? And see a black man with a big pecker, and and make the assumption that he's gonna be a good breeder, he's gonna breed big strong slaves. And so you start to get years later, you start to get all of these African American people that are ripped up, got good genetics, muscular. They everybody's walking around. They take off their shirt, they have pretty good muscular definition. That's something that happens quite a bit, bit with African people, right? African American people. So all I'm saying is from physiological ideas, right? It could be some truth to the idea that in the area of sexual prowess, at least physically, black men may fit the somewhat a narrative of a person who's designed to be physically a certain form and build and etc. If that makes sense, but it's you have to be careful not to misconstrue that with the idea of that he's the most desirable man on the globe because of everyone. Because the problem with that is dominant races like white people or even any group of people where there's more people. If you have more people, you're going to have more people desiring those people, right? So if it's true that white people outnumber black people like 5-6 to 1, or 5 to 1, then you're going to have a lot more women prefer a lot more of the race of people that is in popularity, right? I mean, that's just the more of them. So you also, would have that idea of it. But from a overall who's the most desired in every area except maybe physical and sex appeal, it might be like white men. But again, a lot of times we talk about relationships and women, and a lot of times sex is going to come up, and a lot of these ideas about black men in the bedroom, the mandingos, as Cynthia G mentions a lot. I would say there might be some validity in that if women's mind is working a great deal on the physical idea of it. I think also that would kind of tie into the idea that other groups of men could have preferences. Like we don't know if like white men could prefer black women as much as you could say black men would prefer white women, but it could be that white men don't have the certain amount of access to black women, like black men may have. And I guess what I'm saying about that is black men, uh, you know, can show a great deal of confidence when going after women, right? And so it could be that there could be a certain just confidence level that other races of men aren't doing that. So not saying that they're more desirable than the other race of men, but just that they're putting themselves out there more. Like if you got a race of men that are constantly putting themselves out there and going for this woman or that woman, it might not be so much that the other race doesn't want to do that, but the one that does that the more successfully, he's going to have maybe more access to those situations, if that makes sense, right? So I hope I made sense in it, and I hope I kind of, covered it from as balanced a view as I could. But tell me all what you think about that, about the reasons that you think black men would prefer a white woman. But that's all I want to say in the video. If you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe. Until next time, as always, take care of yourselves and each other.